Alright, given the level of unanswered questions from the last video that we watched, I feel like we really need more info on the Syncope Symphony. So I'm gonna watch the 2 videos that follow up on that as a way to potentially sate my curiosity. SCP-4833. Let's freaking go.
SCP-4833, the Syncope Symphony.
Mm-hmm.
French author Marcel Proust once wrote that remembrance of things past is not necessarily the remembrance of things as they were.
Mm-hmm.
Memories fade and change, whether we realize it or not, and our memories of past events can rarely be completely trusted. Today's SCP-4833 has a lot to do with memories, much
Yep.
like the group of interest it's connected to, the Class of 76. I've already done a video on the Class of 76,
Yeah,
and
we
while
came
I
from
might
that
recommend
one.
viewing that first to enhance this one, it's not necessary, as 4833 does its own thing. The article starts with some text, more akin to a tale than an SCP article. As usual, to pad my video length, I'll read it verbatim for you. Rows upon rows of empty seats line the hall. You've made sure only you're here tonight. The others are all off on business or caught up in their work. You made sure to register a week's holiday after the business down in Magaluf. Your sheer exhaustion needs to be tended to. In the few months since your promotion, you haven't had much time to yourself. But there have been things you've been curious about for a long time. Things beyond your particular remit. You made a requisition request for a file, stuck in a filing cabinet in one of the more obscure parts of Site-01. It's pretty clear that it's something most people would like to forget. The reel begins to play, all automated, of course.
Of course.
Grains flicker across the screen before bursting into an image. It's a high school playing field. The year must be about 1975, 76.
This is American football?
There's no audio, and the image flickers and distorts at inconvenient moments, but the forms are all clear. They're playing rugby, American football, something like that. It's not quite right. The camera stretches and moves around. A smiling group of people, spectators, all wave at the camera.
Spectators waving at the camera. That that is so weird.
Their movements are not constructed or acted or precise. They're messy and uncertain, giggling and youthful. People, real people, sitting right in front of you. Right? You look down at the document, but you can't quite concentrate. You remember school, don't you? Your experience was different. Different place, different time. But you remember it. The disciplined format of time, the early pangs of heartache, the promise of all your dreams before you. An infinity of youth, shaped by your name. It was all ahead of you. That sunset curve over the horizon. You do remember, right? Don't you remember?
Nope.
There will be more of these little sections as we go, but let's look at the actual SCP for a bit. SCP-4833 is a group going by the name Syncope Symphony, consisting of somewhere between 10 to 29 reality benders with similar abilities.
10 to 29 is an oddly specific number. That alone is like, why 29?
The group first came to prominence in the late 1940s, and their activities revolve around experimenting and anomalously altering teenagers between 15 and 18 years old. For decades, they were a rather worrisome group due to kidnapping and forcibly altering these youth, but their activity has significantly declined in recent years. Aside from this, though, the Foundation really has very little idea about the group's goals, fundamental nature, or specific methods. Interviewers with survivors of the group's experiments indicate that their ultimate goal is instituting a state of harmony, although what that means is also unknown. Syncope Symphony's anomalous effects are heavily connected with memory, as mentioned, as well as
the photo of SCP-332 taken before the incident 332-A. The identity is unknown of the man, which I believe could be the director from the previous one.
Music, as implied
Hmm.
in the name of the group. The group often operates as a performing orchestra or running a musical supply shop, and witnesses of the reality benders describe them as wearing masks, although details are scarce. The Foundation first heard about the group in the mid 1970s, a few decades
Huh. So the Foundation found out about it pretty late.
after they started operating, which is pretty impressive, and a dedicated task force was created to track down their members. So far, the number of Syncope Symphony members the Foundation has tracked down is 0, but they have helped contain much of the group's activities. Based on what the Foundation can deduce, the Symphony first began operating in 1947, with kidnappings beginning to occur around the world, particularly concentrated around Yellowstone National Park in the US.
Interesting.
In 1964, they began mass experimenting on people in the town of Boise, Idaho. After this, due to pressure from the GOC and other groups, they relocated their headquarters. In 1969, they opened up a music supply shop titled Syncope Symphony, but it seems to be an entirely mundane store. In autumn of 1975, a mass cognitohazardous event took place at a lake, now classified as SCP 2316, where you probably don't recognize the bodies in the water.
I do not
Nothing
recognize the
specifically
bodies in the
links
water
this
now.
event to the Symphony, but it fits their operations. Of course, in 1976, the Symphony were responsible for events involved with the anomalous class of 76.
So they started kidnapping people. Those people went missing, they experimented on them, and potentially they dumped those people in a lake and it became anomalous. Interesting.
As they experimented on a large number of students across the country. As mentioned, if you want to hear more about these specific events, check out my Class of 76 video. This spree of experimentation, of course, brought the Foundation's attention, and it's at this point that the Symphony went underground, drastically reducing their kidnappings. Some have speculated that the reason the group stopped most of their activities at this point is because they've achieved their goals, and additional kidnappings have just been a way of fine-tuning things. 1988 was the last known encounter between a Foundation personnel and an individual affected by the Symphony until 2019, and we're given a log
That's
of
a
the interaction.
huge gap.
The encounter happened in a bar in a small city in the Soviet Union between Agent Hardcastle of the Foundation and Vasily Stroganov, who had been experimented upon by the Symphony in the late 1940s. Vasily had apparently helped out the Foundation with something in the past, as he himself is a reality bender, possibly because of the experiments by the Symphony, or that was what drew the Symphony to him in the first place. Vasily wants nothing to do with the Foundation now, but Hardcastle insists that he tells them about the Symphony, specifically about something that happened in 1954.
54? Damn, that is quite the leap again. And Vasily apparently is quite old as well.
Vasily fears the Symphony finding him, mentioning that they believe in a design bigger than the last. He says that they're hardly taking anyone anymore, because they found what they were looking for, and he asks Hardcastle to leave him and them alone. When Hardcastle says that he'll have to take him in by force, Vasily stares at him and asks him about Marcy Green, a girl that Hardcastle loved as a teenager.
Uh-oh.
Hardcastle is clearly stressed, as Vasily continues to press him about her, using his abilities to learn his memories. The two teenagers had been separated, and Hardcastle had said that he would come back to her, but apparently he never did.
Oh man.
Vasily says that the Marcy in Hardcastle's head is just a shadow, a fragment that only tells a fraction of the original story, and he tells him to go back to the fields. This causes Hardcastle to collapse to the floor and die, while Vasily quietly cries.
What? Die? That escalated really quickly, huh?
The log ends with Vasily stating that he had to do it, and they'll never get out of his head because they want it too badly. What exactly the Symphony want, though, is still unclear.
Damn.
We get some more text of the individual reading this document. You remember Hardcastle. He'd been at Site 90 when you just started out at the Foundation back in the late 80s. He'd been a mentor to you, fresh from your doctorate and hungry for knowledge. A few months later, he disappeared. Transferred, you'd been told. Now, he barely existed at all. Not many people left to remember him, and they'll be dead soon. This document immortalizes him, but only as a description of a recording, an abstraction of abstraction.
Weird mention about this, like the fact that the document goes on to mention this specifically. It's like, why? What's the point of that?
You light up a cigarette and keep watching the footage. The cameraman is at home now. His mom's clothes are old-fashioned even for the time period. She looks like a faded 50s housewife, smiling a perfect smile at the camera. Her anachronism is flawed, though, and little bits of the contemporary are sneaking in. The father smiles, short-sleeved shirt, old-fashioned watch, beer can, sunglasses. A man who never thinks he's out of place, and always is.
Oh man, I don't know why, but that description is so accurate for quite a lot of people. Ah, damn. Never thinks is out of place, but is. I'll have to remember that one. Sounds like your dad. Wow. Poor dad. So, I wonder if the person who died in that case was also connected to the event that happened in the 50s.
You know these people. They're the same as any thousands of parents who live today, but their past placement still changes them, alters them. They're not the same. They're too natural to be from back then. You must have been, what, 13, 14 back in 1976? It's become a lost time even to you. You only remember flashes. A woman smiling. A father laughing. That person you fell in love with. Teachers with strange faces. Grains on old camera footage. Black and white. Color TV. Shadows of shadows.
Accurate, I guess.
You return to the file. Another agent, Kowalski, was investigating the Symphony before her suicide in 1997, and had compiled a number of relevant documents. First is a shipping manifest from Marshall, Carter, and Dark from 1947, detailing various items likely connected to the Symphony. These items include several anomalous musical instruments, such as a French horn that forces the user to forget key aspects of their childhood, or a violin made out of wood from Yggdrasil.
What? You forget key aspects of your childhood? Man, that horn sounds really nasty. Imagine the entire marching band being made of anomalous music instruments. Oh, God. You remember your childhood? I remember quite a lot of my childhood, yeah.
The World Tree. Other items are more temporal in nature, such as a book titled Visions of the 20th Century, 1940 to 1970, which contains impossibly accurate predictions and photographs from after the publication date. There's also a Yellowstone Park Visitor's Guide from 1970, the second reference so far to Yellowstone.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And an item listed as Documents and Items Recovered from the Marianas Trench. I'll explain that one later.
No! Why is it the one that I want to know the most about? I was like, that's for later. Grrr. Fine,
the second
carry
document is a message from a Foundation researcher to a site director in 1959 about a test subject that had presumably been affected by the Symphony. It seems that the subject affects the memories of those near them, leading Foundation researchers to wear asbestos suits to prevent the effect, although they're complaining about the health problems associated with asbestos.
Ain't that funny? Imagine your choices are like health problems or memory problems. Damn. Between Between the hammer and the anvil, as they say. That's very unfortunate. It does beg the question, though. How did they figure out that that's the material that you need to be able to block out that anomaly?
The subject themselves has lost all of their own memories and believes that they are a school child in 1976, despite the year being 1959. They can't give accurate information on events after 1954, though, and possess a curious obsession with exploration of World War II era bunkers.
For
The
a
third document
child?
contains a few excerpts related to 3 different test subjects in 1968. The first subject, a 19-year-old male, had been altered by the Symphony sometime.
It's called trial and error. I bet you wanted to say cattle and error. Yeah, the poor D-class personnel was like, oh man, I can't imagine. Like, who even thinks those up? It reminds me of QA testing in a way. It's like you just go through a list of like, okay, let's see, does this material prevent it? Nope. Okay, next, does this one prevent it? Nope. Oh.
Prior to 1966. He described the individuals that had experimented on him as wearing white carnival masks.
Mm-hmm.
The subject can alter previous events in time that they themselves experimented, and only to a limited degree. So far, they've only altered a couple of mundane events from a few years prior, and they still believe the year to be 1966. The second subject is a female, aged 36, who underwent significant anomalous alterations in 1949. In their current state, they are obsessed with the Marianas Trench, frequently talking about a sheer fall off the edge of the world. They also now possess an advanced piano playing ability, and the ability to speak in an unknown language, similar to the Algonquin languages, but only when they're playing the piano.
That's so... That... Only while playing the piano. So these people were experimented on, but they gained anomalous abilities. So it begs the question whether or not the goal of the Syncope with harmony is producing an anomaly that can harmonize everyone. Damn.
The third subject is a female that died when they were 30. They had been in Foundation custody since 1959, and believed themselves to be a 17-year-old from 1976, with altered memories. Their predictions of events over the course of the previous decade have been entirely incorrect, claiming that a President Kennedy was assassinated, and there had been a war between the US and a country known as North Vietnam. They ended up hanging themselves in 1969, leaving behind a series of pencil drawings of a violin, a World War II era bunker, and a Super 8 film camera.
Ah, that's kind of interesting because, like, the bunker might be related to the other subject that was obsessed with the bunkers. The violin is probably related to the orchestra. But what's the pen about?
It turns out that a Super 8 camera would end up being found in a small cave in...
And by pen, I mean the camera, my bad. my brain just... Don't question it. All aboard! Ozzy becoming the Prince of Darkness. I don't know what year that was, honestly. I don't remember.
Idaho in 1985. And the fourth document is a log of the footage recovered from it. The video opens on a hillside, reminiscent of the American Midwest, but with strikingly different colors, and a settlement nearby that seems to be a small town from the mid-70s.
A small town from the mid-70s. Oh, this entire timeline seems to be very fragmented between an odd span of like 20 years, I guess.
A large cloud is above the town, intermittently red and black, with several indistinct gray shapes emerging from the cloud and entering the town. The individual holding the camera runs up the hill before briefly dropping the camera and picking it back up. revealing the cameraman to be a male in his mid-teens, a violin case strapped to their back, with a hairstyle typical of the 1970s.
Oh,
The cameraman continues to run, eventually coming across a cave, which he enters. Inside, he finds a thin, rose-tinted film stretched across the center of the cave, and graffiti on the far wall which reads, "Safe House." The cameraman walks towards the film and switches the camera off. When the video picks up again,
huh.
the cameraman is now severely emaciated, and the colors of the environment now appear to be normal. He is talking to the camera, but it's not clear what he's saying. Later,
Okay.
the footage picks up outside of the cave as the cameraman limps towards the hillside, throwing up on the way.
He's limping
He
now.
points the camera at the town, now in ruins, and shows large amounts of scaffolding and construction materials. Thousands of indistinct but apparently identical humanoids are working on the town, wearing identical orange jumpsuits. The weather effect from earlier is completely absent. When the camera footage comes back, pointing at the town sometime later, the town now resembles Boise, Idaho in the mid-1940s. The cameraman turns the camera to face himself, and due to image distortion, it's hard to make out, but he appears to be screaming. Next, inside of the cave again, several words can be seen scrawled on a wall in black marker. Synapse, sibilance, signs, sayonara, the Sibyl. Finally, one word is circled. Syncope.
Damn. So, this person entered a safe house that presumably allowed him to time travel? That's so weird, because, like, suddenly the town's being built. He's limping as well. And he seems to have kind of, like, lost his... I want to say lost his mental, but, like, his capacity to properly think brings through, rather.
As the cameraman turns the camera to himself again, they no longer appear emaciated, but their face and hands specifically are suffering from image distortion in the video, and they are wearing a white Venetian mask. The footage ends here. We're given some more text from the individual reading the file as things start to come together.
Okay.
There is a place that nobody talks about. It's buried miles under Yellowstone Park, and it's a mystery even to the foundation which created it. It's the one thing which truly terrifies them. The primary purpose of this place, this cavernous expanse of steel and concrete, is repopulation, reconstruction, restoration. But there are things buried in it that have a broader purpose. Scranton reality anchors, the XACTs, other buried machines you know nothing about. Things which alter time and change causality in ways which are subtle, unknown.
So I was right that the safe house that he entered was basically changing the time. For our young adult holding the camera, the violin player. Huh.
Unheard. Sometimes, things might fall through the cracks. Smoke clouds your eyes as you stare into space, deep in thought. You're too absorbed to notice changes on the screen as the reel churns and churns through its ancient pictures. A group of friends, laughing in front of their lockers, talking about some forgotten joke or gossiping about unknown persons. The content is not preserved, only the form of it. A boy, unseen by the cameraman but in the background of the shot, is seen writing on a piece of paper. His eyes and face are serious, in concentration. He looks up occasionally, twitchy and nervous. Beside him lies a violin case. You don't see the boy. You've already turned back to the file.
Oh.
He's not a part of your memory. That other image of something that might have been real. Was he ever really there?
A?
The Symphony finally made another big move in 2019. initiating a hostile takeover of an abandoned high school auditorium. The Foundation swooped in and ended up only finding one member of the Symphony, although this was a big break either way. Agent O'Hara.
Isn't that their first member in that case that they managed to find?
O'Hara was sent in to interview and detain the entity. She finds the individual standing on the stage with a heavily distorted appearance, although they seem to be an elderly male. They are wearing a white carnival mask, an outfit typical of stage conductors in the mid-20th century, and holding a golden violin. Around them is a large amount of clothing, similar to what orchestra members would wear from the same time period. In the interview, all of the dialogue from the entity is distorted in the video footage, so we don't get to know what it said, only Agent O'Hara's responses.
So the agent was able to hear it properly, but the recording was not. Begs the question, does that mean the agent died? Because they would have rechecked the footage to properly classify and everything afterwards, wouldn't they?
O'Hara assures it that she's not here to hurt it, and she just wants to understand what they're doing. The entity asks about a bunker of some sort, but O'Hara doesn't know what it means, and instead asks about the rest of the Symphony. The entity gestures to the clothes around it, and although O'Hara first guesses that they died somehow, she comes to a realization that the Symphony didn't really have much of a plan, and instead they faded away. The entity picks up its violin and takes a couple of steps forward, causing O'Hara to pull out her pistol. She asks it why they experiment on children, and what's going on with SCP-2316, the lake. There's some back and forth, and the entity seems to imply that the children they experiment on are like them in some way. The entity begins struggling with some sort of unseen force centered on their violin, and it says something about interpretation and another force at play. O'Hara rebukes him, assuming that the Symphony is just a sort of malicious group that kidnaps children for their own reasons, but the entity continues to suggest that there's another force at work, pushing them along.
This entire conversation is weird because, first of all, the agent pulled their gun out after saying that they don't want to harm them, and then they continued the entire interview at gunpoint. And then while it's supposed to, like, not pick up the answers from it, it kind of, like, shares the interpretation of what the agent was kind of saying at the same time. So it's like, oh man, this entire conversation is just so all over the place.
The dialogue suggests that the Symphony experimented on children in order to make them remember something from the past, but they've largely failed.
The
O'Hara
opposite
continues
happened.
to get angry, telling it that it was all a con because there is no past to remember. The entity begins to play the violin, which starts to affect O'Hara, and she recounts some memories of her last summer after high school. She had a fight with some other girl that she was involved with, and mentions that the hills were green, but there was a red sky over the horizon. The entity is now playing the violin at a speed and complexity beyond what humans are capable of, but they try and pry themselves away from the instrument, eventually collapsing to the floor as the violin hovers in the air, playing itself.
The violin plays itself as well? Holy shit. Hey, Flatline, welcome in. Oh, this entire part with the woman getting affected, man, it thing, creature kind of reeling away and trying to fight back against the symphony or against playing the violin. It's very weird and odd and very disconnected
The
to
entity
me.
clutches its head and makes a distorted sound believed to be a scream. O'Hara asks who we are, and if you remember. Several figures appear around her with heavily disfigured faces, and she finishes by saying that she does remember. Shortly afterwards, other Foundation agents entered the auditorium, only finding Agent O'Hara, fully conscious, with no memory of what had happened. Finally, we get one last section of text from the individual reading the file.
Now I understand why it said that, like, we can't understand what the other person said. The agent lived, but their memory got wiped. Very interesting, however, that the violin playing itself also disappeared alongside the creepy masked individuals.
Before I'll get to the explanation. A girl is smiling in a hallway. She laughs at some unheard joke her friend is telling her. A teacher walks past, a worried expression on her face. The sun is shining through a window. The picture quality washes the scene in grainy light. That hallway never existed anymore. This reel was recovered from the bottom of the Marianas Trench, along with a few other tiny fragments. In the dark, buried beyond where any man could go, the only place anything has ever been found of the things that once were. Nobody remembers her. All you see is some light on a page, an image, a shadow of a shade that happens to resemble this creature from long ago. It's not a memory, but a flicker that indicates that something, anything, once moved there. The reel ends. Its sound echoes through the room. Click, click, click. White and black lines flicker across the screen as you sit there, cigarette smoke filling the air in front of your blank face. One day, you will never have been either.
That that type of interpretation is so weird because the past never existed. Just because you forgot it doesn't mean something didn't exist. Just because a tree falls where no one hears it doesn't mean that there is no sound. And like, it's a very weird way to say that something is so forgotten that we can't even imagine what it would look like. It's a very roundabout way of saying it, I would imagine. And hi Nick, what's up killer? Welcome in.
Some disaster or trivial catastrophe will happen, and the whole rigmarole will start again. A bunker, a lever, deaths and endings. A movement will end, but the symphony will go on forever. And even if it doesn't, even if all fails, your own life will be gone. It will be extinguished as so many others were. You will be a corpse, a skeleton, dust, a thing that never was, and nobody will remember you.
Yep. That's
the trees
life.
will grow over your grave. Flowers will dance. Humans will linger on, then die, or spread out among the stars with no memory of their homeland. The earth will crack and burn, and the molecules will die, and the atoms will die, and the dark will consume them all. What few scattered waves remain will dissipate, and nothing will ever have happened. And in
There's the sentence again of nothing will ever have happened. Bruh, that's just life. Life moves on.
infinity, with no concept of itself. Or maybe not. You pick up your lighter and burn the documents, watching each lick of flame consume them.
Burn.
You stand up, your face stark against the flickering lights, and walk out of the room. Nothing beside remains. Okay, so a lot of this is pretty weird, of course.
Weird. Extremely weird, you mean? Very disjointed weird and fractured.
And I'll tell you right now that this SCP does not answer what exactly the Syncope wants, or what exactly they are. Some things should best be left to mystery, after all. This does provide some very interesting info about their background, though. This SCP is largely connected to another one, which you might have already figured out.
Yeah.
SCP-2000, located underneath Yellowstone National Park. SCP-2000 is a large underground facility, or bunker, that is used by the Foundation in case of an end-of-the-world scenario to repopulate and recreate the Earth. The facility possesses all of the capabilities and resources to recreate the world as it was at a certain time, including people, cities, landmarks, artwork, etc. It can recreate
Oh.
memories and life histories of people if needed, and
Ah.
afterwards releases a mass amnestic across the globe so that no individual remembers the process.
What? Wow. That SCP sounds like hella trouble.
Once it's all done, life simply goes on, as if nothing happened. But as the article mentioned, sometimes things fall through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
One of these things, as alluded to in the Marshall Carter and Dark Shipping Manifest, is a document recovered from the Marianas Trench. This document appears as a separate tale, actually predating the writing of SCP-2000, but it alludes to an alternate timeline in which everything went to hell and the world effectively ended. The fact that the document was found at the bottom of the Marianas Trench suggests that it wasn't an alternate timeline at all, but instead our own time before the Foundation fixed things.
Before it was recreated?
SCP-2000
I
raises
see.
the question of how many times has the Foundation actually used the facility, since the memories could easily slip away. That all being said, it would seem that the Syncope Symphony are individuals that retain their memories after an end-of-the-world scenario, and SCP-2000 is used.
Oh.
We see this in the video log of the town in Idaho, as some
So perhaps those that can alter memories, the shifters, perhaps they all are able to like recall things and are not affected by amnestics. That would explain a few things.
sort of
Hi,
scenarios
Lewis.
playing out, causing really strange weather effects and weird gray figures.
Mm.
The cameraman manages to hide out in an anomalous safe house in a cave, protected from the scenario as well as the amnestic released after the Foundation came in to fix things and revert
Yeah.
the world back a few decades. The Symphony, therefore, is going around and trying to make teenagers remember the real past, not the fabricated one from SCP-2000. Although, again, why exactly they're determined to do this is left to your imagination. They seem to use music as part of their work, as they believe that music has a consciousness of its own, transcending memory.
That's cool.
A slight understanding of their backstory and methods doesn't really lend them any sympathy, though.
I mean, one would assume not, no. But that is pretty cool, honestly. Like, I could have guessed, my immediate thought was that they wanted to know the future, but it seems that they actually want to know the past. They just seem to fail miserably at that part. Oh, and with kids, why kids? Why would you want the kids to be the ones that remember things that happen? Because they would be too young to know a lot of things. And they would be preoccupied with other things. So that's the part that's just weird. If you want to know the past, you'd think you'd go for like older people. Perhaps like they just want the latest, freshest memories, and the kids have the best non-altered variants, I guess. Not faded away, like they remember the most details. I do agree that like music is a good way to do it because we associate a lot of things with music. A lot of memories are also tied in with music.
As they've still caused plenty of problems for reasons unknown. So, as it would turn out, no solution is without flaws, not even the Foundation's magical tools to fix reality.
Mm-hmm.
Experiencing the end of the world is bad enough, but experiencing it and then remembering it is likely enough to break an individual. SCP-4833 shines a light on one of the most mysterious groups in the SCP universe, but even after it's done, there's still plenty of mystery left to ponder.
Yep. There are like a ton of questions that this video didn't really answer. Oh. He said that they have to reboot things. Said they have the technology to recreate almost anything and that making people is actually pretty easy. They would clean out and contain things, rebuild the broken cities, repopulate them. It would take a long, long time, but he said he would eventually get things back to the way they were before. He even said they could recreate memories and stuff. I just sat kind of stunned, watched him as he kept going along, getting dressed like this was all no big deal. I told him he was nuts. There was no way people could just forget, that all this could just be swept away. He stopped, looked at me, smiled, and said, "Why not? It's been done before." I don't know if that man was crazy or not. I think he was sane. As he was leaving, he said something about putting my house underwater. "Please don't let them brush me away. Don't let them hide us. Try and find more. I know there's gotta be more people who try to leave something behind. Don't let the world die in vain. Remember us." Goddamn. Pretty crazy. Hmm. Yeah, this was a very trippy SCP about the Syncope Symphony, and I don't feel like a lot of the questions that I initially had with the class of 76 were answered in this one. However, it does shed some light on what exactly they're trying to do, as well as provide quite a bit more on SP 2000, which I haven't seen yet. So like now I kind of need to see SCP 2000 as well. I feel like I'm going down this rabbit hole in a very in a very rapid way. For those of you on YouTube that managed to stay until the end, thank you for watching. And let me know what other SCP you want me to explore next.